Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the next conversation here with CMG. Excited about the topic today. And I've got two of my esteemed colleagues, Kim Scribner and Estelle Hamilton here. Um, a big part of what we do at CMG is help organizations get better, get more effective. We have a whole area of practice around what we call the road to revenue, all the elements that are in the go-to-market space. The other half of our focus is on how organizations get better at doing what they need to do. And that is a long list of activities from the individual behaviors of leaders through how leadership teams perform as a team to the articulation of strategy and its execution. There's a lot of coaching and guidance and holding people accountable that goes into that. But that process of change and evolution, the transformation that can happen there, can really unleash a new level of performance for organizations, and in some cases that was completely unexpected before the moment of reflection on how to do it. And part of the joy of having the conversation today is we have a couple of folks who helped us at CMG think through this idea of, hey, organizations don't need to simply survive. They can aspire, and in many cases should aspire, to thriving among their competition. And I'm appreciative of this because with one of our partners, Russ Lang, we started kicking around this idea of cultural transformation, of capability transformation and evolution, and talking deeply about the gap between what so many organizations experience as just getting by versus taking it to the competition, taking advantage of opportunities, leaning in a direction that increases their pace, that increases their confidence, that increases the commitment and engagement of their teams. And it's a journey that's as much about emotional evolution as it is around behavioral change. And that was the gestation of what we at CMG call Thrive. We want to help organizations get out of a mentality where they're simply trying to survive and into one where they believe they can, should, and will thrive. And that has turned into a bunch of different areas in our practice. And today we're going to talk about one of those, which touches on a set of factors that, we believe and also have validated through a lot of work, help organizations get into that mode. And so from there, maybe I'll dish it over to Kim Scribner, who was one of those creators of what we call the ThriveNumber assessment that has proven to be kind of a starting point for many leadership groups to say, are we ready for our journey, or do we have more preparation to do? So Kim, I'll let you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what that
It,
is.
I mean, I think part of what you hit on, Gary, is that emotional factor. And when we're working with leadership teams or even at multiple levels within an organization, when we can get people to do this self-assessment, which is what the ThriveNumber assessment is, and they can see themselves the things that they agree they have opportunities or success points in, that makes it more likely for them to get on board and participate in the changes that have to happen that come after the assessment in order to reach
Yeah,
that road to revenue, right? So
yeah,
kind of a more typical consulting approach might be, we come in, we assess you, and we tell you what you need to do. This kind of partners two pieces together because it takes the self-assessment element where you are reflecting on your own experiences inside the organization, combined with our experience and our observational piece of, yes, we are seeing those things. And then we take those two things together to help create the plan. And that makes the plan more likely to help you achieve those things that you haven't been able to accomplish, because it takes the cultural elements of your organization into account that an external advisor might not have awareness of.
yeah. And Estelle, I'm curious, you've been through the cycle with clients on this. What kind of responses do we get? How do leaders react when they see the output of this assessment?
Yeah, I think that leaders feel very validated by the results of the ThriveNumber surveys and diagnostic reports that we have taken them through. It allows them to get a really strong grasp on what their organization and what their leadership teams are doing really well with, and then also identify in a very fast way what they need to improve upon. And something you said earlier, Gary, that I really liked was that this is a point of reflection that companies get to take. And a lot of times in life, people drag their feet or make excuses when it comes to finding time to reflect, so that doesn't happen. But when it does happen, you have a stronger foundation and a better vision about how to move forward. And I think Thrive, being a rapid diagnostic, helps people digest and reflect a lot better and are more
Yeah.
comfortable doing it.
And
I
for
love that
me,
idea of the mirror, right? It
yeah,
just holds the mirror up to the things that you might not be admitting that then become clearer because it is data.
yeah. And that's kind of where I was going to go. One of the joys the first time I saw this assessment that came out of conversations that Russ and I had in my backyard, right, was that all of a sudden leaders and the people they lead were able to get a visualization of where there's consensus and agreement. Hey, as an organization, we're good at these things. As an organization, we're bad at these things. We're aligned on that. And also the visualization of where there is a lack of consensus. And what I've experienced and observed is, that's an opportunity for people to externalize what they were already feeling in their gut, right? There are certain topics where, as a team, we seem to be so functional and capable, but then this topic comes up and there's just endless debate and we're not actually moving forward. And by being able to show a bunch of different factors in a way that's externalized, now, whoever's leading the charge can actually say, hey, listen, before we move forward, let's actually see if we can get to consensus on how we see the world. And that for me leads into all kinds of fruitful conversations about why we've struggled to execute in certain areas as an organization, because there may be head nods in the room and then the hallway conversations happen and you get either passive or open resistance to certain things because, well, I don't see it the way so and so sees it. And this tool has, for somebody like me with lots of gray hair, right, has been the first sort of comfortable and very safe way to elevate that and allow a group of leaders to reflect and focus and understand how prepared they are to embark on maybe an arc of change and a set of behaviors, or to settle in and resolve how they see the world first.
I think
So
there's something interesting in what you said there, which is you still get those debates sometimes, right? So, I've been in the room with leaders where we're sharing the ThriveNumber results, and there's a lot of, nothing that we didn't know. Good to see it in black and white kind of response.
yeah,
And then there is some, well, we do that, but everybody just doesn't know that we do that. And I think that uncovers a whole other piece, right? Which is,
yes,
in order to thrive as an organization, which this is all about, you can't just be doing the thing in a closet. Like, everybody has to have awareness that this is happening so that they can make use of, good environmental insights and things like that, right? So even that little element does bring some clarity that the leadership team, the entire organization needs.
yeah, because if the aspiration is we see the world through the same lens, then we can leverage our strengths and we agree that those are our strengths. We can address our weaknesses and we agree those are our weaknesses. Yeah, Estelle, I know you were about to chime in, so I want to hear your voice on this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Kim, it's like the way you describe it makes it sound like it's a catalyst, not just for change, but for conversation.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
having those conversations, whether it be healthy debate or, healthy alignment, it keeps change happening, right?
It takes certain implicit aspects of a team culture, let alone a broader organizational culture, and takes them from being implicit to explicit. And the dialogue there is merit in having that dialogue. It starts to build trust. It starts to bridge gaps. And that's a massive factor for many organizations between leaders who assert this is what we're going to do and people believing them or not. Because if their teams can say, yeah, we talked about this, we're on board, that's another sort of addition of juice to the momentum. Because I think many people have experienced if the leader says that, but then the real conversation happens and it doesn't hold up, everything bogs down. And Kim, I saw you nodding your head and kind of smirking at that. So I know you got stories on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we're not good as humans at admitting where there's problems, right? So if we can put it into, we all, anonymously answered this survey, which then provided the evidence that we can then have a more honest conversation together about, right? What Estelle said about unlocking the conversation couldn't be more true. What the assessment also does is it's based off of 6 drivers, 30 attributes, right? And no organization, let's say they all started at 0 for everything. They were missing it all. Well, we're not going to fix it all in one slot either. So it gives us the opportunity to prioritize the things that are most important for that specific organization's needs at any given time. So you start aligning things like your strategic plan for an organization with your opportunities to thrive. And then that helps create this kind of magical plan that everybody can be aligned to because they've agreed that these issues exist.
Do we want to talk a little bit more about the structure of the Thrive itself?
Let's talk about some of the high level factors, because again, that was some of the original debate of like, well, what are the things that might need to be true for an organization to thrive? And we have done some work on that and structured that. So yeah, go for it.
Oh, well, I was going to ask the two of you to talk about like how your industry experience before we created Thrive enabled you to make it and structure it the way that it did, the way that we did. Yeah.
Well, how about I start? Because I think sequentially, the topic came up while I was in a corporate leadership role and helping a company, and it was a multi-billion-dollar business, shift from this idea of essentially riding the currents of our industry category to leaning away from that sort of passive mentality and a little bit towards a more proactive approach. And the shift that we got to was what I termed making our own luck. We started to take market share. So the category trends were interesting, but they weren't the determining factors on our ultimate success. And once we got a level of belief in the enterprise that we could beat the competition, not just match the competition, a whole bunch of things cascaded out of that. And so we started, again, this is where with people from CMG, we started talking about, so what does that look like? How do you pay attention to your external environment? How, let's be careful not to obsess over every last thing we could measure, but also not be ignorant and not pay attention, right? There's sort of a Goldilocks approach there. How do we think about our ability to articulate strategy and intention? How do we deliver on that? So there were a number of different factors that at sort of a high level became the ingredients that we would want to assess and say, if we put these together in this manner, organizations could truly do better than they have previously. And the process of getting there in and of itself is momentum generating because it gives agency to people. It gives validation to people about how they perceive things. They start to see progress because, again, there are ways that this assessment could be delivered on an ongoing basis. And that was sort of philosophically where we got to. And I feel like now I need to pass it over to Kim because I think she's got a kitchen table conversation that took place that,
it was
put
dining
everything
room
forward.
Table, but yes.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, so it was a little bit we were talking about, was myself and one of our partners and another colleague were talking about how how do we manage our firm internally, and what are our different practice areas, and what are the different things that we bring to organizations, and what do they need, who do we have internally who aligns to those different areas. So it's kind of a little bit of an inside out conversation of what can we help organizations with and what do they need. And then we started looking at it from the outside in. And so it was, if they were reflecting on these things, I came more from the startup side of the world. And so worked for organizations that kind of were naturally good at these things because they had to be, always reflecting, always pivoting on a really fast pace. And so that kitchen table conversation, there was lots of big post-it paper out on the table, and what questions would we ask people to see if they're good at creating a North Star, and what questions would we ask people to see how well they do at executing on something once they create it. And that was like I would say baby alpha of the product maybe creation compared to where it is now. That was about 4 years ago that conversation occurred.
And for me, the joy in hearing some of these stories is we have been acting ourselves in alignment with this. And it has now created not just an assessment tool, but a whole set of capabilities and an ability to provide direction in some cases to clients, to guide them, sort of arm around them. We're in this with you through coaching or helping leadership teams, stay accountable to their commitments, to help them draft strategies that leverage what they're good at, and even in some cases to, on a temporary or in some cases on an ongoing basis, kind of embed with the team and play not just a role of conscience on the shoulder to hold people accountable, but also coach, supporter, personal trainer that can be very individualized. Hey, I think there are behaviors that would help me be a better leader. There's a set of leaders who could operate better as a team with a bit of guidance, and that's the joy for me. And as somebody who is in a consultative space, seeing behaviors take root, seeing the emotional blossoming and the self-assuredness that people get, and watching the kind of impact that they deliver is massively validating. And it's part of the reason why I love working at CMG is we get to do that. And not just talk about the hypothetical, but we actually get to roll up our sleeves, build relationships, and bring people through that journey. And when we're done, it's an opportunity to sort of stand back and go, look what they're capable of. This is awesome. And I get really excited by that.
Yeah, I think for me, being in that coaching side of our business where you've got to have tough one-on-one conversations sometimes with leaders to point out things that you're seeing that aren't happening. What the assessment helps me do, just even as an individual, is say, hey, you said this too. It's not just me pointing it out for you. And so it helps, the organizations that we partner with get on the same page as what we're observing much faster. And that allows us to get down to the brass tacks of making it better.
Yeah.
I think another...
keep going.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was actually going to pivot to you because you and I have worked on some of the profiles that we're now starting to see come out when we work with clients. So we just implemented one, a week ago, 10 days ago, that came out that we would articulate as student body left, right? That where there was a high degree of consensus, there were a lot of areas for improvement in the organization. And I think an additional element of this assessment that is helpful for clients and the leaders in those firms is to understand you're not alone. We've seen this before. We can help you get to where you want to be. And so regardless of what the results are, it's not a debilitating moment of, well, now what? It's like, no, we got this, right? Based on how this looks, this is likely what we need to do next. And even that dialogue, going back to your comment about dialogue, becomes validating and calming. It soothes some of the stresses and helps people believe that they can move forward. And, again, I was going to ask you, you've dealt with leaders who've sat in the room and started to get this, assessment played back to them. How do people respond to it?
I mean, to me, there's a mixed bag. There's individuals who are very focused on a number, right? So we're conditioned from a very early age. We want to get 100% on our tests, and so everybody wants to get 100% on their Thrive assessment. The reality is almost every organization is never going to be great at all 30 of these things that we're assessing for. But that first initial shock can be like, oh, like, you get the leaning back in your seat and, oh, but what does that really mean? And the leaning back forward, and you get a lot of this like head scratching kind of emotion that happens when you first share the results. And then, part of the assessment is we show the difference between sometimes different levels within a leadership organization. And that starts to demonstrate the how much kind of lack of understanding there can be actually in the upper levels of an organization from what's really happening by people who have to, deliver all the time. And so it's a mix. And, then you have, sometimes you'll have leaders who are just like, cool, thanks for letting us know. See ya. And then the kind of more pragmatic leaders who care more about people, honestly, are often the ones who step forward and say, okay, now I need you to help me figure out what to do about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As an example of what it looks like when we do this with different levels of leadership, one of the strength drivers or capabilities that we look for is strategic vision. How strong are you at setting a strategic vision, a North Star, planning against that? If we have the most senior leadership team saying, oh, 100%, we do this really well, but then we go down a couple levels into the organization and a mid-level leadership team is saying, we do not do this well at all, that in itself is very indicative of the lack of maybe communication or, just how some levels might be very aware of your goals and others might feel very far apart from them. And so how you can harmonize them and, get people to talk to each other in that regard too is really important.
Yeah. And we had exactly that situation where we had an organization who took the ThriveNumber assessment and, they had some opportunities in the area of strategic vision, and they worked hard on creating a more improved process for their strat planning and their strategic plan and their communication of their strategic plan. And when they took the ThriveNumber assessment the following year, that was very evident in the results, right? You could see that people now had a better understanding, that they believed that there was a North Star for the organization. And so we were able to do exactly what we've been talking about here, use the assessment, prioritize the things that were most important for that organization. And now we can move on to what's next and helping them improve in another area.
And that is a great experience, watching clients have more positive results after they take it again. And it reflects the hard work that they do and that we've been able to help them do.
And maybe sort of a spot where we can settle in and wrap up this conversation, because we're going to talk about Thrive a lot more. It's a rich vein of conversation, reflection, and insight. I think the assessment itself is incredibly valuable, not just at the start of the journey. I view it as that, are we prepared to embark on the journey kind of moment? And based on the results, it might say, no, we got some more preparation before. It is also, just like getting an annual physical, a way to sort of check in and say, what's gone on, right? And are we healthier now than we were a year ago? Do we still have room to improve in the areas we focused on, or do we move on to the next level of opportunity? The other part of this that for me is interesting is, depending on the aspirations of the organization, sometimes it's worth this assessment not being an annual thing, but maybe even quarterly, or quarterly with certain teams, right? Because just like going through preparation to run a marathon, right? there are opportunities as we're getting better and getting fit to see, are we on track? And the nice thing here is it doesn't take long to take this assessment. It is comprehensive, but it is a very good evaluation tool to help course correct or shine a light where there's maybe the behaviors or the intentions that we had aren't being fulfilled. Maybe we got to change our tactics a little bit. And so, maybe in a future episode of our conversations here on Thrive, what we'll start to do is show some sort of visualizations of what the results might look like and how they might evolve over time with coaching and other sorts of facilitation to help the leaders actually make progress. So with that, I want to thank Estelle and Kim. I love the backstories and all of the stuff that's spread out there. I also appreciate the thoughtfulness from each of you as you engage with clients and use this framework to help them get better. It is an area of passion for me, and it's an area where I constantly feel like we're doing good work with our clients, and hopefully this has been helpful for everybody who's listening. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Thank you both.